All right, folks, what a historical moment. I just wanted to comment as someone who puts out content on a daily basis, considers myself to be an independent journalist. I have nothing but the most respect for Tucker Carlson, and I'm truly inspired by the path that he has paved here, showing that we can step outside of mainstream media and have an impact and give the people what they want, which is the ability to just hear both sides and make up their opinion for themselves. So, in that regard, a huge 2 thumbs up and job well done to Tucker Carlson. Very brave, by the way, too, because we know the national security impact and we know what's at stake here and what it took to go actually interview Mr. Putin in the Kremlin, in Moscow, and show the world, right, Putin's side of the story. Now, initial comments that I'll make on this is that I think that Putin showed himself to be very reasonable in the interview, very conservative. I think that many people thought that he was going to be dropping all these bombs about some of the other stuff that maybe some of us in the community are very well aware of. You know, I can't talk about it here on this platform. Of course, here we are, right? I'm talking about independent journalism, free speech, and how great this moment was while I'm still tiptoeing here around on YouTube. But you guys know the deal. We thought that Putin was going to maybe, make some other allegations, provide some other evidence, documentation, maybe speak on a few other things. But he was really conservative in his approach, and I think it was well played. I really do. From a strategical standpoint, for it being broadcast out to the whole world to see, he didn't come off as edgy, as trying to push his different ideas and basically red pilling people into things that they aren't aware of, that are crazy conspiracies, right? And so I say that to just, say as someone who understands what just happened, right? This is a moment that will be looked back, historical moment that we're going to look back at. The history books are being written right now as we speak, and this moment's as important as World War II, World War I. We're in the middle of another global conflict, and this was just so massive. And so the numbers are already coming in, and it's absolutely decimating the numbers that mainstream media puts out. Mario Nafal sharing this. 2023 top 5 news programs cannot compete with Tucker. You're talking 10 million views for the News Nightly. Morning Brew gets 8.5 million. Global Eye 7 million. And we have Tucker's interview with Putin already at 100 million views and growing on X. And so it really does show the power. It's not we're stepping outside of mainstream media and having an impact. No, we are dwarfing. We are dwarfing. We are making a joke out of the mainstream media. And so in that regard, 100% respect for Tucker. Now, what was so interesting, though, starting off this interview, Putin probably bored many people, especially in the days of clickbait and the TikTok memory, that we want just that instant gratification, right? Give us the news and give it to us in 60 seconds and tell us the bullet points, tell us how to think too, and then we'll move on. Well, he started out by giving a little history lesson. It was pretty funny, and I thought this Twitter post put it together pretty well. Putin, let me give you context about Ukraine. Tucker says, "You mean Maidan?" And then Putin goes on to give a history lesson going back like almost 1,000 years, describing what took place. And so I can't play the music. They have this is a really funny clip, and hopefully I didn't give anyone a seizure with how quickly those images were flashing. But basically, Putin explained, going back and laying out this history, which I thought was actually very well done, to give everyone context on that region, on the historical claims in Ukraine. He shared a story of traveling to Western Ukraine back in the day, and everybody there spoke Hungarian. Everybody there was Hungarian, and the rest of the country was Russian speaking, right? And Ukraine in this country that we now have, right, is a relatively new situation, right? So you have the historical claims, and obviously Putin is, saying that that's one part of the story. But then he goes on to say that, he's really trying to take out an ideology in the country of, I'm not even going to say the word, but you guys know what I'm talking about, right? An ideology that goes back to Hitler and World War II. And so this is a very dynamic situation. And for most Americans, they couldn't even find Ukraine or Russia on a map. And so I thought that for an interview that was going to be seen by so many people worldwide, I thought that that was well played by Putin in that regard to provide some context. Now, we continue on here, and I thought that he nailed it on the head in so many regards, and it was a conservative approach. It wasn't the US dollar is going to die. It's you guys are doing it to yourself. Right here, Vladimir Putin says the US government is killing the dollar with their own hands. Many countries, including major oil producers, are accepting payments for oil in Chinese yuan. And he even went on to say that we didn't want to ditch the dollar, right? So many people think that all these countries want to get rid of the dollar. They really don't, right? They would like to use their own currencies. They would like to maybe do settlement outside of the US dollar. But Russia was forced to when the United States decided to weaponize the dollar. Now, the other thing that was important to note, he mentioned how basically Russia was at the doorsteps of Kiev. They were in Kiev and right there. And this was back in March of 2022. The war had gotten started. The strategic military operation is what Putin called it, right? And he mentioned how they had basically were in Kiev, had taken Kiev, but they were promised by the West and NATO in the negotiations, right, that we were going to come to a peace agreement, that everything was going to be fine. All that they had to do was withdraw their troops from Kiev. And so that's what they did. And then shortly thereafter, Ukraine, backed by NATO and the US and everybody else, just basically signed on to full-out war until the very end, until death. And so they did, their part of the deal was to back out of Kiev. And I think that many people forget that that happened, that the strategic military operation, they cut and slashed their way through eastern Ukraine, and they made it all the way to Kiev. And they basically had it. But then in an effort of, good conscience and peace, they tried to do a deal. They were told to back out of Kiev. That's what they did. And then we get the full-out war that we're now in still to this day. And so I thought that it was pretty reasonable, how Putin was laying it out there, how they've been just trying to get reciprocity back from the other side, from the NATO Western Alliance. And every time, Tucker asked him, why don't you just call up Joe Biden? And he said, what's there to talk about? Every time I just asked them to stop supplying weapons for the war to Ukraine. And every time they just turn around and add more money, more weapons coming to Ukraine. And speaking on that, our Senate just passed the bill, the foreign aid bill, that's going to spend $95 billion in foreign aid going to Israel, going to Gaza, going to Taiwan, and going to Ukraine. Despite the fact that we're broke, we still come up with new funds. We still come up with more weapons and ammunition that we continue sending that way. And so as an American, I'm just speaking as an American. I'm not here to defend Putin. I'm just speaking as an American. We have not been acting as good faith negotiators when it comes to bringing peace. We haven't. That's just a fact. And our media wants to just paint Putin as the big bad bear, and it's all them. But I mean, we have not been acting in good faith either. And I thought that General Mike Flynn summarized this very well as far as kind of what is the issue, because we've seen Putin laid out how he had a good relationship with Bush Sr. He had a good relationship with the younger Bush. He had good relationships with, obviously, Donald Trump. He hasn't spoken to Biden, though, since before the war started. So he hasn't spoken to Biden in a while. And as he laid out there, he has no reason to, apparently, according to him. But I think that General Mike Flynn basically laid this out and summarized it so perfectly well on what the problem is back here home in the United States, which is our deep state entrenched military industrial complex. And he laid it out perfectly. He says, I'm certain that there will be a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking, but the likely rules of engagement for this interview were probably negotiated well ahead of time to get this much time and to have this wide-ranging of an interview. What my big takeaway is, despite U.S. presidents, plural, right? This has been presidents on both sides of the aisle, left and right, over many decades, deciding to seek peace and reconciliation, although not all of them. Those decisions are nullified and undermined by the dug-in security and military-industrial complex ticks living in the bowels of the deep state. We need strong leadership running our White House, and we need the same running our state houses too. November cannot come quick enough. Lastly, watching Joe Biden tonight simultaneously made me feel ill about the current state of leadership running our nation. We're in big trouble, and we have a demented president driving the American train, which is fast going off of the rails. I thought that was a perfect summary. Right on the same day that this Putin-Carlson interview comes out, we get the special counsel documents coming out in regards to Biden's handling of classified information. And basically, he did break the law. Special counsel did find that. But their defense is that he's a senile old man, essentially. I'm just summarizing. But their defense is literally a jury would be sympathetic to this old man who is senile and couldn't remember when his son died, couldn't remember when he was vice president. And this is all documented and now out for everyone to see. Don't take my word for it. Go check it out for yourself. This is an independent special counsel that found this. So on the same day that our president's getting exposed for basically not knowing where he's at, on the other side of this, we have the Putin interview dropping, and then taking it one step further to what I continuously talk about, the fact that we are just broke, bankrupt, and bust, and we are losing the respect on the world stage. As Putin said, we're doing it to ourselves. While everybody wants to focus on putting the blame on somebody else. It was Putin, it's China, it's the flu, it's this, it's the big bad. No. It is us. We're doing it to ourselves. And we're going to continue to lose our share of the world reserve currency pie if we continue to abuse our role that we have. And the other thing that's going to happen, and Americans need to understand this very well, is that as we lose that role on the world stage, how this is going to impact our everyday lives. And this is what I keep on bringing it back to. I'm not here to say whether or not Putin's a good guy or a bad guy. Clearly, he's got a different side of the story than what the mainstream media has been telling us, and it was refreshing to hear that. And so, as I said, a huge day for free speech, independent journalism. The power is in the hands of the people, and that's why I appreciate everyone who supports my show. We don't just talk about crypto, and we're never going to just talk about crypto, despite what some people want to tell me, right? Just stick to crypto, bro. We are never going to do that because this is all tied back together. And if you want to have a fundamental investment thesis, then you need to understand this conversation. You need to understand the current politics, the current events, the geopolitics, and how this all comes back home to roost. And Americans are going to wake up one day and realize the damage that we have done. So with that being said, guys, I appreciate everyone for stopping by here today. Later today at 7 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be doing an interview with Chris from Fruition Productions. That is the director and producer of the XRP Unleashed documentary. So that will be later today at 7 p.m. Eastern on my TikTok platform. I hope to see you guys there. God bless you all. I am your host, Zach Rector. I really appreciate all of the love and support. If you want to support the channel, just remember that you can start by smashing that thumbs up for me, sharing this content far and wide, and everything else is at my website.